Hey guys, producer Ross here, and welcome to another edition of the Self-Isolation My Ipswich Town Football Club. Today, I'm joined by father and son, Nigel and Jamie Gooding.
Hey.
Thank you very much for joining me, guys. You all good in this current weird times?
Yeah, it's all a bit strange, isn't it? So, yeah. So, Jamie, do you want to tell Ross how things are going for you at the moment?
It's just everything's a bit up in the air, but it's keeping busy, which I guess is helpful. It's keeping me sane at least. So, yeah, still busy as usual.
Cool. Well, of course, you work at the NHS, don't you?
Yeah,
Nigel?
so I'm one of the few people allowed out of isolation of my own home each day. So things are starting to get busy now. Lots of preparation been going on in the background very, very quickly over the last few weeks. So everyone's really pulling together. Lots of really good NHS staff out there, really pulling the stops out at the moment. So a long way to go. Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention this, but this is the second time we're having to record this because my fault. But you're of course currently both in the same house, but one of you downstairs, one of you upstairs. But I thought,
to full isolation. So yeah,
basically, yeah. So I thought I'd just bring that up. Of course, every town fan has a beginning. How did you become a town fan? Start with you, Nigel.
For me, it was right from birth, really. I think I was genetically ingrained with it. The fact that my dad was a town fan, both my granddads were town fans, diehard town fans as well. I think I was just born blue and white through the middle, like a stick of rock and Ipswich printed through me, really. Ipswich Town printed through me. So right from the beginning, really, and lucky enough that I was in an era where it was in the 70s, so I started to see some of the good stuff that Town were playing, really. So yeah.
So from your highs of in the 70s, watching Jamie, of course you're a bit younger than your dad.
Yeah, so I mean, it almost looked like it was on the up as I was born, because I've always been a Town fan really from birth. I mean, the very first season I was kind of there for was the one we went up in, so it should have been on the up there. Obviously lately not so much, but it's very similar story, just completely genetically ingrained, sort of blue through and through, really.
So Nigel, what was your first Town game? Of course you're watching the Town during the glory years. What was your first Town game you can remember?
Yeah, so the first Town game I can remember was one of the big ones for us, really. It was the FA Cup final. I can watch that. Remember watching that on the TV that morning, getting so excited with all the programmes out that my granddad had given me, looking through them and the teams that had played then, all the stuff that was in the papers. I mean, I was only 7 at the time, but can remember it really well. I remember the goal being scored with Roger Osborne, and my dad getting so excited he flew in his chair, flew right back out of the chair and ended up in the other room behind him. At the time it was really, really good. So that was really good for me. So really lucky as well that my dad was working at Croydon's the Jewellers in the town at the time, and they had the FA Cup in the window there each day, and they were allowed to have a session where you could bring family in to have photos with the FA Cup. So I've got my one here, which is of myself and my brother sat there on the table with my mum and dad behind. Crazy really, because after that my dad every night they had to take the cup back to the corn exchange to put it in the safe at the corn exchange, and there he is, he's with his friend in the car. His friend goes in to just check they can come in with it, and he sat in the with the FA Cup in a cardboard box in his car, really. So crazy really, but so lucky to have had the opportunity to got my hands on the cup at the point we'd won it. So yeah, really good.
From that great memory to, can you remember the first game you went to at, say, Portman Road or anything?
Yeah, like that? so bizarrely, most people will remember their first game really well. I can't really remember it too much in terms of who we played. I think it's probably someone like Coventry we played against, but I do remember the atmosphere and thinking that it was pretty intimidating there. probably quite different to how it is now at Portman Road at times. But I just really remember the atmosphere there. From that point, I didn't get to see the town actually going to Portman Road that much. When I was growing up, but certainly by the time I'd got to uni, I was sort of going as much as I could really. And when I was up at uni, I was going to away games over to the games were up in the north because I was up in Bradford at the time. So and then every time I was back home, I was making sure I was going to see the town. So yeah.
Brilliant. So from FA Cup glory to top flight football to Jamie, your time as a town fan, your first town game.
So my very first one was, so we didn't actually live near Ipswich when I was born, so I never got a chance to go to home game until I was sort of 6 or 7. The very first game was a reserves one against Leicester. So the first one was an away game over at, I think it was still the Walkers Stadium then. I don't think it had been renamed to the King Power. And then my very first one at Portman Road, I want to say is Wolves. I think we won 2-0, something like 2005 or 6. So just after we'd moved across sort of Ipswich direction. So yeah, that's probably the first one I can remember as far as home games are concerned.
Yeah, it was a bit strange for you, Jamie, wasn't it? Because we were obviously in Leicester at the time, and I remember, really well phoning your mum to say, "Oh, get Jamie ready. I'm going to take him to see the town, and playing the reserves at Leicester." And I think these Leicester fans thought we must have been real die-hard, travelling all the way from Ipswich to see Ipswich reserves play up there. And we'd actually just come 3 miles down the road from Leicester, really. But we were one of the first in their new stadium, really. That was the first game they had there. So,
So the first one I remember kind of seeing and being at a game at would have been Roy Keane. So really got 4 to pick from. And I think of them, even though not necessarily the season hasn't gone as well as we'd hoped and kind of planned as well, I think of the 4 probably Paul Lambert, really. I think in terms of both understanding the club as kind of an entity, the history behind it and kind of the essence of it, but also the style of play that we've got. I think, I know we've been in a lower league and it's not the same kind of opponents as we've had, but of the kind of 7, 8, going on 10 years that have been watching properly, this season has definitely been one of the most enjoyable ones. I think on par maybe with the one when we made the playoffs under Mick. So, yeah, Paul Lambert's going to be my answer for that one.
Controversial, but
I was going to say you can tell he's been up at uni and not seen all the matches.
I was
talking about the style of play. I'm not really quite sure what the style of play is.
But yeah, on to you, Nigel. Of course, you've got more of a better selection of managers.
I mean, for me, it has to be Bobby Robson. He's one of the figures that you would look up to. I mean, just his style of management, the man management that he had, how he treated those players like his own family, and you just hear all those stories of things, and how we would ask them how their families are doing and things like that, and. You read the books about sort of Muren and Tyson and how when he was trying to get Muren here and he was flying over, he had the players out on, I think, Portman Road waving up to the plane and things. It was things like that. He would think a bit outside the box that some of the managers these days would think in terms of how you needed to treat your players, really. And if you treat your players well, they'll respect you. And they clearly those players looked up to him, and you can see throughout his career as a manager, he did it near enough everywhere he went. He got the results and the performances out of players and turned teams round that you'd never imagine. It's just such a shame when he was England manager that they just missed out on get to that final, because that really, he just deserved that so much, really, as a manager. And I can still see him trotting along that touchline, I think, after the Belgium goal when David Platt scores it and dancing along there. So, yeah. I mean, from more modern times, George Burley, again, I think, and I still think that was such a big mistake when they got rid of Burley. For me, that's almost the start of our decline, really, at that point when you go back. I think before that, the fact that he'd turned that team around, really, was getting his own style. And I mean, it was a really exciting time as well, the style of football we were playing. We had wing backs pushing forward and scoring goals. They were so, that team had the tenacity and the passion about that is just completely missing from a lot of the players at the moment in terms of how how they play. You came out and you just knew they were going to give it all, and they just would not give up. It was and George Birdie really did get a lot out of those players. You look at people like John Lyall as well. When he came in after John Duncan, again, he had very similar team that he carried on, but just got completely different things out of those players. People like, oh my goodness, people going back to like David Linnigan playing at centre back for Town. I mean, he was awful when I, remember seeing him first play. And actually, and then, people like John Lyall really started to get the best out of some of these players, and it became a really, he still hadn't got much skill, but at least he knew what he was going to do, and he was a real solid sort of defender at the back. So, so there are some other managers that have done well, but for me, Bobby Robson really is the top one for me.
I'm going to say, because when I started properly going was just after, as we were sort of starting to kind of slow down and drop down the leagues kind of season on season. So it was just the end of, or the start of Paul Jewell and that kind of era. So I missed out mostly on kind of Pablo Caniago and Richard Naylor and everyone then. So realistic, it's probably Daryl Murphy. I think of players that I've seen and gone through with it. Yeah, they're going to be Daryl.
Cool. Now, Nigel, you got a good selection, I think.
I've can go quite a way back. Well, I mean, for me, John Walk was my favourite player. Really, I think the fact that I got to see him play in the sort of the Robson teams, and then coming back again later on in his career and playing as well. When I remember being up at uni and seeing him in playing in matches. Up there, and when we were at the start of the Premier League, which is amazing, really, that he just kept going and going, and his style of play just was how I always really wanted to play as a young lad, just bursting through from a midfield. Unfortunately, I hadn't quite got the skills that John Walker got, but that was as a young lad growing up, that was the sort of player that I that excited me, really. So and the fact that he also scored so many penalties as well, it was growing up, that was great, and then the fact that he also appears in a film like Escape to Victory as well, having that with some other Town players as well. It's just brilliant. So yeah.
Of all of them, I think it was probably it was either the first or second season that we were there as season ticket holders. It was the 3-0 win against Leicester in the snow under Roy Keane, and I don't think I've seen a game quite like it since. It really has stuck with me. I think both, obviously it's good to see Town win 3-0, but just the way that game kind of went on, the way they kind of battled through what was, looking at kind of the highlights from it, is a ridiculous amount of snow to play through, and still carrying on and getting a 3-0 win. It's definitely up there as my favourite game.
Yeah,
brilliant. Now, Nigel, what's yours?
I for me, it's probably the Bolton semi-final when we got to Wembley in the playoffs. I mean, having sat through so many heartbreaks in playoffs, and every season you thought, God, emotionally you just felt so drained at the end of it all. As a supporter, goodness knows what the players felt, at the end of it all. But that Bolton one, the fact that we were really on top, and it just had everything. Last minute goals, penalties, sendings off in there, and I can still remember Martin Reusser rushing forward and then smashing this ball. It felt so far out that he hit this ball, and just then you knew we were on our way to Wembley, and that was such an amazing night. I remember that was when I was working in Leicester, and I'd come back that afternoon for the match. And the following 2 days, I couldn't even speak at work properly. My voice had gone completely. All I was doing was running around the pharmacy going, Wembley, Wembley, and winding up everyone else that was a Leicester supporter there as well, who then told me, well, don't get too excited because you're going to lose in the final. But
wow.
So soon put that right. So that Bolton game was amazing, really. My goodness, I've seen quite a few in the time. I remember a really good goal. That was when I was up at uni and went and saw Ipswich play away at Liverpool in a replay, and that was the season before we got promoted to the Premier League. So I remember having to watch the first game, which was completely sold out at Portman Road. I watched that on the telly in the pub in Bradford, and actually had all the guys that were in the pub supporting Ipswich with me, because clearly they wanted the underdog to win. But the replay we actually went across to, and seeing Gavin Johnson absolutely power this header in from across that came over. He just like flew like Superman, flying through the air, hit the ball, hit his head, flying through into the goal. Absolutely cracking goal. Several sort of real solo efforts, particularly one that stands out for me is Connor Wickham's goal against Sheffield United a few seasons back, when he just sort of took, I don't know how many, it must have been about 4 or 5 players easily, and then scored. That was a really good goal. And then probably the other one that stands out for me is actually Martin Royce's goal at Wembley as well. I think partly the fact that at the point that he hit the ball on the pitch, we were actually just in line with him, where he actually let rip and saw this ball go, right past the keeper. And at that point, I mean, it was sort of a done deal almost by that point. But you just knew as soon as that ball hit the net, that was it. We were in the Premier League. So back in the Premier League again. That was really good. So yeah.
So some cracking goals there, Jamie. Can you top any of those?
I mean, I'm gonna have to put the Connor Wickham one there is probably my number one that I've seen. I'm not very good at remembering goals and that kind of thing, and it's one that does definitely stick with me. So it's even just on that, it kind of deserves that top spot. I think from kind of a fan perspective, also in the first leg of the playoffs against Norwich, the sort of equaliser just before half time, just the reaction to it and everything. It's the first time I've really seen kind of Portman Road like that. That's also really kind of stuck with me, yeah. I'm torn for a favourite, really. I mean, I've been to a fair few. I think, especially since being at uni, I've managed to get to quite a few. There's a lot of sort of clubs in Lancashire and that direction in League One. So it's been quite good this season, at least, for getting to away games. I think Rochdale has stood out for me, apart from being a bit of a pain to get to from the station. It feels like a proper ground. It's all behind all the terraces, up the top of a hill. I think Accrington was quite similar as well. Yeah, I think personally, probably going to have to say Charlton sticks out for me, actually. I think that was my first away win, so that's definitely got memories with it. But it's quite a nice little sort of ground. It's not too big, not too small. Reminds me a bit of Portman Road, really. So yeah.
Cool. Nigel, what's yours?
Oh my goodness. So I quite like going to West Brom, actually. It's that's quite a nice ground. We went a few times when we were living in Leicester as well, and the best thing was we always beat them as well when we played them away. But it was always a nice sort of it always felt like a family type ground, a bit like Portman Road, really. The atmosphere was really nice, and you get good banter with the home fans there as well. So I did like West Brom. Stadium Light at Sunderland, pretty good. Been there a few times. Really, great atmosphere there. Unfortunately, I have a really good friend that's a Sunderland supporter. So we used to go up together. I would then go in the away end, and he'd go where his season ticket was. But most of the time we came out there, we were on the wrong end of the result, really. So he'd just be winding me up on the way home. So or we'd just be silent in the car because you just daren't say anything. So yeah, but. And Newcastle as well. The times that we've been there, I think I was really blown away with Newcastle. Apart from the fact it almost killed me getting up the stairs to where the town fans have to go. That's a long way up. And then you couldn't even work out who was playing when you were up there, because they looked like ants walking around on the pitch. And I went up for I think it must have been a League Cup game. It was a cup game in the middle of a week. There weren't that many town fans up there. And I remember David Sheepshanks coming round and shaking all of our hands and apologising because they played so badly. And when, the town fans had travelled so far to get there. Another sort of personal one for me from away ground, pretty rubbish ground actually, but has really good memories for me, is Oldham, which would sound really strange at Boundary Lane. So that was, I remember going across there with my wife to be. That was one of the first times we went out together, and how I talked to her coming in to seeing a town game, I really don't know. She must have seen something more in me than that. But that was when they played on the plastic pitch as well. 24th of February 1990 that was, and we lost 4-1. It absolutely poured. It was freezing cold, and I remember us just being stood under this umbrella, and there were probably no more than around 30 town fans, I reckon. Probably there was hardly anybody. So and I remember the town players coming out, because they had to play in trainers because they were on this plastic pitch. Well, it was almost like they just bought random trainers with them, and they were all trying them out on the pitch beforehand. It was like they hadn't got their own set, and people were swapping pairs of trainers and things like that. It was really bizarre. So yeah, but it went, I mean, even though it was freezing and wet, it went really quick, that match, which was pretty good, seeing as we came out of it losing 4-1. But
I can say, obviously I haven't seen sort of quite as many as my dad has, haven't worn as many, but in terms of the ones that I can remember having worn or kind of owned, this season's really is probably my favourite one. I think both home and away, I think really sticks out for me. If it wasn't for having forgotten to bring my birthday vouchers back over Christmas, I'd have bought both of them. But I've got the home shirt on now. I'm very, very close to buying the away shirt. I think it is it's nice and basic, but with enough of kind of a flair to kind of say, yeah, we mean business. It's that kind of kit. It really is.
Just ignore the sponsor.
yeah.
Nigel, yourself, what's your favourite town kit?
Well, I've probably got a couple actually. One that just more from personal really was the one from about 1989-90, which was a Fison's one with sort of a different sort of shade of blue patterns on it. But really, because that was the first kit I actually owned as a fan. I remember ordering that when I was at uni and it arriving, and then probably later that year trying to ruin it. Probably I can't remember which season that was, but it was the one where we had Steve Whitten, and I thought, right, I'm going to stick a big number 9 on the back of my shirt and iron it on, not knowing that you had to actually put something over the number 9 and between that and the iron, and try to iron it directly on and almost put a hole in the back of it. So and then realised when I wondered what was going on, then quickly got the iron off. But that kit was good from a personal point of view for me. But I do like I did like the first season we went into the Premier League, which was I know, Ross, you mentioned this on the pod the other week, the one with the red lace on the collar and white sleeves. I like white sleeves on the shirt. I think it almost makes it look quite old fashioned as such. And when you see a whole team photo and they're on that, you could turn that into a black and white photo almost. And here it comes. And it looks like the players are from the 1950s almost. That was I really like that shirt. I mean, my other one at uni, I don't think I probably wore much else during the time at uni. I just permanently going round. In actual fact, then you would then bump into other people that were randomly town fans up there that would just come and have a chat with you. So really good. But from the the Golden Robson era, the one that from an away shirt, I really like the white one with the black pinstripes on it. That was really classy, that shirt. Quite a lot. I mean, I think last season's relegation was pretty bad. I mean, we clearly knew it was coming for some time, but it was still hard to really digest that we were actually going to be playing in the third tier of English football. I just a few seasons before, you thought, well, things can't get any worse, and then they do. They just take another nosedive really, and you end up going down. I think all the playoff semi-final defeats were pretty depressing. I think partly because they were just so emotionally draining as fans. You'd think after the first leg, we got home leg to come, we're going to be fine on a lot of them. The ones against Sheffield United and the one where we lost against Bolton. Rules changed in the league in our favour, and those were not great. So I think but last season probably tops it all really for me. Yeah.
Would you say that as well, Jamie? Relegation, or is there any other moments you think?
I think it's definitely up there. I think there's two others that have hit as hard. One maybe slightly harder. So the first of those, which is kind of the less sort of personally insulting one, was the playoff second leg against Norwich, because we've gone across Carrow Road, got completely hyped up, Been looking forward to it all week since kind of the first leg, and we go and Berra gets sent off. We let in a penalty, and it's 3-1 completely over. Now the one that kind of hurts the most is probably in about 12. It was my 13th birthday, which having been born in Leicester was particularly significant. We go away there and lose 7-0. And it was possibly the first or second game that Mick had in charge. So it was just after we got rid of Paul Jewell, and it was absolutely horrible. I think by goal 4, I had my hat on backwards. I was just trying to work out what club to support next instead. It was, I really teeter and whether to kind of bother anymore. That was horrible.
Yeah. I remember that well, Jamie. Yeah, but the lunch in the pub beforehand was quite good, though.
Yeah.
Better than the game.
The one going to Leicester for your birthday. Got the train from Ely to. It was just chocker full of Norwich supporters, and there's us two there, brazen in our Ipswich Town shirts, trying to pump us up when there's literally everyone else on the train was a Norwich supporter. So
From the worst moment to your best moments as Town fans, let's start off with you, Jamie, because I don't know if there's many to through.
There's a couple, definitely. I think because it's the furthest we've probably an away game was Blackburn, and we lost 3-2, and it was last game of the season before the playoffs of that same season as the Norwich ones, and it was about 80 something minutes in. I think we had just let in the third goal, and I think it was Darren Bent missed a penalty for Derby, to which I'm not sure if I remember right, but I think whoever they were playing went up the other end straight away and scored.
Reading, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. And I just remember a couple of people seeing it on their phones, then about 10 more, and suddenly there's just massive cheer across the crowd. And suddenly kind of realised that we were going through. I think also kind of just more, almost as a football fan generally, as much as we did lose 2-0, when we were at Sheffield United last season, the game that they got promoted, I think is, as far as seeing it's probably one of the best as a fan, just generally of football, one of the best moments I've seen. I think the way that our players, their players, both sets of fans responded, and with Sheffield kind of being the city quite close to me, it did hit home a bit, kind of standing there, definitely.
Yeah, that was a strange game, that one. I enjoyed that one, actually, for that. I mean, until that point, I absolutely hated Sheffield United. I think probably because of all the playoff defeats we'd had against them and all the gripes that there was a lot of bad feeling, between some of the stuff that had gone on, and actually completely turned my opinion of Sheffield United after that game. So, yeah.
So for yourself, Nigel, what's your best moments as Town fan?
The FA Cup was good. We won it as well, so it wasn't just it was there and you could get your photo taken with it like several years down the line. It was it was like a month or so after we'd won the FA Cup. I got to see Wembley, because for years I'd been saying, right, I'm not going to Wembley until Town go there, and then I eventually gave up and went and saw an England game there, and then of course that was the same season that Town ended up getting there anyway. So yeah, that was really getting ready for crazy, really. I remember my wife painting my face, and then even Jamie, then he was only about 6 months old, if that. There he is at home that day with me. I'm looking after him. So but that atmosphere coming back on the coach, and then you'd got Town fans on the bridges, cheering as the coaches came back and things as well, was really memorable. That they were great days, really, those ones. So yeah.
Well, guys, thank you very much for joining me and sharing your memories. Some great stories there.